This is Export Like a Boss, the podcast for those on the front lines of international business and trade. Succeed in business on a global scale. The planet is your market. Here is your host, Alberto Rodriguez Baez.
Last year, I was invited to conduct a workshop at the annual NASFITE conference in St. Louis, Missouri. The annual NASFITE conference is awesome, and we will have an episode to talk about NASFITE in the near future. One of the keynote speakers from last year's conference was a businessman who spoke about his experience exporting livestock, the challenges, the successes, and his experience traveling around the world and doing business in many different countries. The speech was fascinating, and I wish more people were able to listen to the advice he gave, his tremendous experience as an exporter, and his encouragement to others to export. That presentation was the inspiration behind the creation of this podcast. At that moment, right then and there, I decided there should be a platform for exporters to tell their stories and share their international business and trade experience. Today, I'm honored to interview Tony Clayton, whose speech at the NASFITE conference was the inspiration to start this podcast. Tony Clayton is the president of Clayton Agri-Marketing, located in Jefferson City, Missouri. Tony has over 25 years of experience exporting livestock and agricultural products. Clayton Agri-Marketing is considered one of the leading livestock and agricultural exporters in the United States. Tony truly exports like a boss, is an inspiration for exporters and businessmen all over the country, and I'm honored to have him as a guest in today's episode. Enjoy! Tony, thank you very much for being with us. How are you doing?
I'm good, Alberto. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to this conversation.
Thank you very much. Tony, can you tell us how and when did you start Clayton Agri-Marketing?
Well, we hung our shingle up April 1st, 1996, so we're celebrating our 20th year in business. Prior to that, my experience came working at the Missouri Department of Agriculture for 6.5 years, and then I went to work for another private export company before starting our own business here. So we've been at it I have been at it in the industry of moving livestock around the world for 29 years.
Can you tell us a little bit about the different products and services your company offers?
Sure. 95% of our business is actual live animal genetics. We do breeding swine, we do beef cattle, dairy cattle, horses, sheep, and goats, and it's all for breeding genetics.
Great. And your company where is located?
Well, our main office is in Jefferson City, Missouri. We have a secondary office in Chicago because that's where we fly most of our animals for Asia out of the Chicago market. And then we have representatives and agents in about 19 countries around the world. That's amazing.
And this is another historic episode for us because your company is the first company from Missouri that we are highlighting in our podcast. So thank you very much.
All right.
Tony, how many years have you been selling your products abroad?
You know, from our company starting our 21st year, that's all we do is international business. We don't do any marketing here domestically. And of course, as I may have stated earlier, I've been marketing agricultural products for 29 years in different countries.
Currently, how many countries do you export to?
We have exported to 52 different countries, all over the globe, and we worked on most of the continents. So, we do business in Asia and Latin America, Europe, and even Africa. So we're active in a lot of different markets. That was one thing that when I started my company, of going through a devaluation of a currency in Mexico in 94 and 95 and only working maybe within a couple of markets, that when I started my own company, that I was going to make sure that I was diversified in enough markets that there would always be a game in town somewhere in the world. So we're very diverse in a lot of countries.
That is just amazing, and you are truly exporting like a boss. So we are very excited to have you in our show today. Tony, do you remember which is the first country that you exported to?
Yeah, when I was with the Missouri Department of Agriculture, I helped some Missouri breeders, and we actually made a shipment of breeding swine to Thailand. That would have been probably one of my first shipments, and then followed up, we would have been real active in the Mexico market.
So that shipment to Thailand being your first shipment internationally, how did it go?
Well, it went well, but it was certainly a learning experience. You know, when we move live animal genetics, this is not a product that can sit in a container or on a loading dock at a warehouse. So when the process starts, it's got to move through the system, you know, not only for the welfare of the animals, but you know, for the documents that we have, and as valid the blood test and other things like that. So it went well. You know, every shipment that we have, even if we've been at this for this many years, is always a learning experience.
All right. As far as being with Clayton Agri-Marketing, do you remember which was the first country that you exported as part of Clayton Agri-Marketing?
Well, our first shipment would have been a shipment of breeding swine to Mexico would have been our first shipment. Our first air shipment would have been a shipment of breeding swine to Korea. So that was our first couple of shipments the first month we were in business. And
can you explain a little bit what's a breeding swine?
Well, it's pigs. It's when you start a hog operation or for commercial production, you have to import, usually start with 3 different classifications of swine. You bring in the great-grandparent animals, then you produce the grandparent animals, and then the parent stock animals. The parent stock animals are used they produce the pigs for human consumption.
All right. This is fascinating because certainly it's completely different to exporting any other kind of product. And we will have some questions a little bit later about the challenges of exporting live animals and highly perishable and delicate products like the genetics and other things that you were mentioning. So, do you remember how did the first opportunity for exporting come about?
Well, whenever I was working within the international marketing program of the Missouri Department of Agriculture, and at that time, my responsibility was to only export animals from the state of Missouri and help our breeders. So we'd had established a trade mission. We'd went to Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Hong Kong. And this was my first international trip. It was 21 days. And we actually conducted swine seminars in all of those countries and to establish a relationship with local producers, introducing them to live animal genetics from the state of Missouri. And as you would with any product that's to be exported or marketed, rather, it's building that relationship between buyer and seller.
And after that first international client, how did the new clients find you, or did you develop a marketing plan to find them?
Well, we found them through, you work with people in offices like the Foreign Agricultural Service at U.S. embassies around the world that are the boots on the ground in various countries of trying to develop trade for U.S. products. So we rely on those folks heavily to introduce us, because when we put an agricultural attaché at the embassy, or we put an agricultural trade officer in the ATO office, they're there for anywhere from 3 to 5 years to make contacts, and so they try to connect the right buyer and seller together as well. So we depend on that. And I tell a lot of people, and especially I have to do a lot with educating our farmers and ranchers that may travel with us, and I encourage them to go with us so they can see the market, that a lot of people go into a market and they expect too much from their first visit. Long before internet and email and some of the technology that we have today, I used to tell people that it might be 3 years of working a market before you made your first sale. And if you did something less than 3 years, you were an exception to the rule. Now, the technology that we have now, with email, internet, Skype messaging, and meetings online, and those type of things, have maybe shortened that down a little bit to build that relationship where you can look somebody in the eye to develop that market and develop that relationship.
What are some of the recommendations that you could give to current exporters as far as developing good relationships with foreign clients?
You need to spend some time there and maybe leave that order book at home the first time you make the trip. You need to go into a market and you need to, run a little analysis on it for yourself to see if the product that you have can work in that market, if the importing regulations can support what you're doing, and you can enter this market, as painless as possible. Because a lot of times there is so much money spent to develop this clientele, between if you're going to trade shows, if you're conducting seminars, or you're going to various industry meetings, to get there and understand the market, understand what they expect, understand what the competition is in that market, what you have to compete with, and if you can deliver your services and or products at a competitive cost. And so there needs to be some market investigation as you try to develop this clients.
Do you remember, or do you have a rough estimate about how many countries have you visited?
Oh, I've visited over 55 countries. I know.
Wow.
I spent about, last year, I was on the road about 273 nights last year, I think is what my hotel accounting was. And that's a little bit good and bad. As you develop clients and more clients and they expect to see you. And the thing that I found out over the years is farmers in any country kind of operate the same way. There's a mutual trust developed. They like to look you in the eye. They like to tell you what their problems are, and to build that relationship up. And you have to go and be in that environment, spend some time with them. So that's been a little bit of a blessing and a little bit of a curse as well, because there gets to be a lot of demands as you build up a lot of clients, and they all want to work with you. And they don't mean to offend them if they send other people from the staff or something like that. So we try to spend a lot of time with our clients and to prevent a backdoor loss to competition.
Tony, you mentioned earlier that a recommendation you have for exporters or potential exporters when they visit potential clients abroad is to have realistic expectations. Do you have any other recommendations for potential exporters or current exporters about how to make the most of their visits to potential clients abroad?
You have to spend some time doing your homework. And I see this a lot from maybe state organizations like Department of Agriculture's or Departments of Economic Development, where they take people on trips and they go in and people are all excited when they get back. And I'll give you one example. People have gone to China on trade missions and they come back and they say, okay, I want to export cattle. How do I get started? I got your name. Well, we haven't been able to export cattle to China since 2003 because of the detection of BSE or mad cow disease. And so doing that homework before you ever go, and to see, in our particular case, with these breeds of cattle that we may want to market there, are they accepted? Is the color accepted? Are they heat tolerant? How do they use them? How do they consume them? You have to spend so much time to see if that product is accepted there. And then we have to see if the health regulations that we have, that we work with, because there are certain markets in the world, as an example, if I want to export cattle to Russia, cattle from Texas don't qualify because of blue tongue virus that would be detected in the state of Texas or in the southern part of the United States. They don't qualify. So you want to make sure that what you have fits that market for specifications, the rules and regulations, consumer acceptance. So you spend a lot of time on that. And then going into that market and, asking questions and listening. We do have very good products, in our case as far as animal genetics, and they are probably the most respected around the world. But we do need to spend some time and listen what the client wants and what they expect. And there's times that I tell clients, hey, what you want, and what I have, they're not going to work together, and we have to walk away from that. And so homework is the big thing.
Now, a question that I hear often is, how do you deal with jet lag? And I would like to ask you that because you travel a lot. So how do you deal with jet lag? How do you prepare yourself for a trip to a country in the other side of the world? How do you prepare yourself to come back? Do you have any recommendations?
I ask myself that every morning when I woke up about 2:30 this morning, and I think I've been up since about 3:20. It seemed like a thing that always lingers. But, when I travel there in that country, and I tell people this all the time, that I have kind of 3 simple rules of travel. When you get a chance to sleep, sleep. You get a chance to eat, and a chance to go to the bathroom in a civilized place, you should probably go. And if you could follow those 3 rules, you'll probably get along real well. But you need to go into a trip well rested. And there are times that jet lag, and I'm in a meeting, and when that time of day hits you, it's like flipping a light switch off. You're tired, you're watching somebody's mouth move while they're talking, and you're not hearing a word they're saying. And I have been in meetings before where people will use jet lag to their advantage to try in negotiations, to try to get something they want because they know you're tired. And you're better off to probably give yourself a day when you get there. A lot of times I'll leave on a Friday, and get into Asia late Saturday night. I may take a day now as I get older on Sunday to kind of get rested before I start work on Monday, and not try to go into any situation too tired and agree to something that I wish that I hadn't have done later. So, rest is the big thing. And now, with the way the world is changing and security and the parts of the world that I travel, because I've traveled in Iraq, I traveled in the Mideast, and it's always the thing that you have to kind of make a plan for security, and a lot of what ifs that come into a travel plan now.
Those are fantastic recommendations. Tony, you brought up the aspect of exporting cattle to Asia and other countries. What are some of the specific challenges of exporting live animals around the world?
Well, usually when we start our process, and each country has a different import protocol. So that means we have some health regulations that we have to meet. And most of these are followed by blood tests that have been negotiated from their local Ministry of Agriculture back through our U.S. Department of Agriculture. So that is our game plan to follow that. So once we and the veterinarians that we hire or work with from respective farms or ranches, once we take that tube of blood and we start this process, our clock is running, and usually we have 30 days to get that animal exported out of the United States. So we're working, with a lot of people within this chain. So we have a veterinarian that's pulled the blood from the animal. We have a courier service that will transport that to a laboratory that we use. And then we have health papers to be generated. That have to be approved by USDA. And then we have to get this animal to a port of embarkation. And you have to remember, we move animals by truck to Mexico. We fly animals out of Chicago, Miami, and New York to various markets around the world. And then for our large shipments, we also send boats. Everything that goes into, say, Russia or the Mideast, we load off the East Coast at Wilmington, Delaware. We made a shipment of cattle to Vietnam off the West Coast last November. So these animals are going to be in the air for, 24 to 36 hours, and these cattle may be on boats for up to 30 days. So we have to plan this movement of animals, animal welfare, to make sure that they're comfortable and they get there as healthy as they can be. And when they arrive, that the buyers can get the full genetic use from the investment that they have made. And a lot of these are sizable investments of millions of dollars that they have invested in a shipment. So we want them to be happy with the shipment that they have. And again, we want them to come back as repeat business, because it takes so much time and effort to develop this first sale. Your profits in our business come from our repeat business like anybody.
Definitely. And have you had any situation, maybe from your first export operations, in which a shipment of live animals was stuck in customs somewhere? And if that happened, what do you do?
Well, there's a lot of things that you try to do to speed up the entry process. So when we make a shipment of animals and all of our documents are done and our plane is loaded, we're already transmitting those documents electronically to the buyer and maybe to their customs or Ministry of Agricultural officials in advance for a pre-customs clearance. And you will run into situations where governments have employees that are maybe not aware of the process and how it works, that they hold things up. I've had some shipments of horses to China one time that they thought a USDA document needed a stamp, and it's not a document that requires a stamp. So we've had to wait 5 or 6 hours before we were released, waiting for a USDA office to open up back in the United States so I could get a letter that explains this document does not require a stamp. And so many of our shipments, we put somebody on board the plane. If it's a ship, we've got a veterinarian, we've got somebody on with that animal or animals, to help speed this process up. So, yeah, these things do happen.
So exporting live animals is more complex and requires more steps than exporting, let's say, cups. So what are some of the tools or resources or organizations that have assisted you in the export process?
Sure. Most of our animals are registered purebred animals. So that'll come back to their respective breed associations, like the American Angus Association, American Hereford Association. If we're doing breeding pigs, swine, we have an organization called the National Swine Registry. Those organizations would keep track of all the ancestry of these animals, plus their performance, genetics, genomics. We have done so much performance testing in our country for years. We'll fall back on them because it's sometimes like buying an animal. It's like buying a car. You can buy animals with different buttons and whistles for quality as compared to others. So we do use those organizations. We have an organization called U.S. Livestock Genetics Export. It's our super cooperator that works with many breed associations that gets marketing funds from USDA, Foreign Agriculture Service, to promote U.S. products in certain countries. I've been a past chairman of the board for that for 3 years. I'm also currently on the board of directors and a member for several years. So we use them and other members that would help service our projects in other countries. I'm also a member of the Livestock Exporters Association, and I was president of that for 3 years from 2011 to 2014, that we, as an organization, operate and cooperate with various agencies within the U.S. Department of Agriculture to help open markets, assist us to export to certain markets, make sure that we have workable protocols, the markets stay open. If our country hits any health issues or political issues that close our markets to us. So we use organizations like that.
Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and we'll talk a little bit more about your experience. Are there any lessons from exporting your products that you can share with first-time exporters or someone that is thinking about exporting but needs a little bit of guidance or a little bit of encouragement?
We have a motto here in our office with our staff and our people we work with around the world, is we say that we plan the trade and then trade the plan. And if you start to deviate from one of these plans, and you're going to get thrown a lot of curveballs in the export process. So this first organization planning is a very, very important step. And we are involved with so many different government agencies. Before we start a project, I notify them. I say, okay, as an example, we've got a shipment of breeding pigs going to Korea next week. I'll notify the U.S. Department of Agriculture Animal Plant Health Inspection Service because the animals we have are coming from 3 different states. And I'll notify them, and I'll just give them, this is an advance pre-notice, that our company is starting a livestock shipment of breeding pigs to Korea. This is our dates. These are the states that are involved, and this is our plan. And so I give them an opportunity to come back because, like any other government agencies, USDA has reorganized, they've consolidated. They don't have as many people working within the agencies that we used to. So every time that I go to get documents approved, we may be doing something different than we did last week. So we start that communication because they don't like any short-term notice. We do the same thing with our airlines, our transportation. I want to know how we are going to route this shipment. I need to know if we are going to connect from one plane to another in Anchorage, Alaska, how long we'll be on the ground, if we're going to rewater animals on the plane. And then we notify, our bank that we've got a letter of credit, and I've sent them a copy of the letter of credit, or they've advised us with our letter of credit, and we'll be presenting documents. And so everybody has a schedule to follow. And then we have kind of a shipment Bible in our system here that any one of my staff people can go on at any time, and they can pull up who the players are in this shipment. And this is the plan of the day. This is what's going to happen on this day. This is what's going to happen on this day. And we complete the shipment, and that's the way we work. So this plan the trade the plan is a very important step.
So the name of the game is planning, flexibility, organization, and communication.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to have it at every level, and you don't assume, because we have so many people in our chain of doing this, of truck drivers to airport employees to loading the animals, and things that I have to look for that I never dreamed that I'd have to worry about. If I have a dock worker strike and I can't load a boat, or if there's a traffic accident where we're moving 20 trucks of cattle to the port, if I'm worried about a hurricane on the East Coast. So we're having to watch weather, we're having to watch political situations and currency exchanges, and if there's a devaluation of a currency, and some things that when my day starts early in the morning and I'm watching CNN or something like this, I never dreamed of how the world got so small and so connected in so many things that affect our business, from weather to financial markets to political situations, and how it affects us.
And talking about the political situation, the news have just come out that the UK will be leaving the European Union. Do you have any clients in the European Union? And if so, how this exit of the UK will impact your business with those clients?
Well, it will. We have made multiple shipments of pigs to two different customers in the United Kingdom. Now, when they were members of the European Union and we started negotiations with our USDA for health protocol, just to show you how long it took to open that market, it was almost 8 years to the day to get that market open. And now that Great Britain will leave the European Union, so we're going to start this whole process over of trying to make sure that we have a health protocol now that'll strictly be with that country once Great Britain leaves the European Union. So yeah, it's gonna certainly muddy the waters, and I'm sure this is going to be a string on a sweater effect now, because you're going to have a lot of other people look that they don't like all this rules and regulations that come out of Brussels, and everybody looks for their own independence. So yeah, it's going to be a factor in our business. That's not a big part of the world that we do a lot of business, but it'll certainly have a ripple effect here.
When you talk about clients abroad, what are some of the marketing strategies that have worked for you to get new clients abroad?
Oh, sure. We have company brochures, and getting those translated into the local language. And if you had told me that we would have been marketing a lot of livestock from a website, I would have thought you were crazy if you'd have told me that 10 years ago. Our website, it may not be the best, but it is in, not only English, Spanish, but Russian languages. And we have our brochures of different languages posted to our website. So that's helped us. We do participate in certain exhibitions that I feel that I can get the most bang for my buck, because these are expensive. They're much more expensive outside the country than they are here in the United States. So we try to plan participation in certain markets where we can reach a lot of people, because a lot of our customers want us to come to their farm. And it spends a lot of time when you've got 20 or 30 customers in a country that are scattered all over, and you're spending days or weeks there going to see all of them. If we can set up in the right trade show or right seminar or participate in activities like that where people can come and they can see us, they know we're still in the business, we maintain that contact with the client. So that's something that has worked for us. We do a lot of technology exchanges where we may sponsor a seminar to provide speakers to tell them how to get more use from the animals that we export, and it's not a high-pressure sale. As a technology exchange, that's probably worked the best for us. And then the hardest thing to do is to find that local representative or agent that can represent you, your company values, your ethics, and things like that, to represent you in that market. That's the hardest thing to do as part of our business, of finding those people that you can work with day in and day out, and you have a good trust factor, and what they say represents you and your company.
Tony, you've had tremendous experience traveling, meeting with companies abroad, and doing international business. Have you had any situation in which you thought, we are not in Kansas anymore? A situation that made you realize that doing business with foreign companies is different?
You know, as far as different situations that made me realize just how diverse the world was and how we needed to change our approach, as you know, our company logo, we have a marketing gavel in our logo. We have a picture of a beef animal, and we have a picture of a pig. When I first started traveling in the Mideast, you know, and handing my business card that had a picture of a pig on it to somebody in the Mideast, you know, was not the right thing to do. So, you know, we had to come back and say, okay, we've got to have a different logo when we do our business in the Mideast countries because of how they feel about pigs. So, you know, it's been a lot of things like that, of make sure that we did not offend somebody within a country when we went to work. That's kind of alleviated itself a bit, but in the beginning it was like that. And then just the customs, the local customs of greeting people, drinking what you're offered to be, what they offer you, to, you know, the handshakes and just the formalities, you know, has been a learning experience. And the things that I try to do now is when I go into a new market, my first stop is usually the U.S. Embassy to meet with the agricultural officials or the local staff, and to have them coach me up a little bit on anything that I need to know. Because you try to do some advanced work and reading on customs and working within a market, but to speak to somebody locally and can tell you, oh, this is accepted, this not, has been a learning tool.
Very good. And we will have the links to these organizations that you are mentioning on our website in the episode's notes. And you were mentioning about your website. Can you tell us your website's address?
Our web address is, of course, www.Clayton, Clayton, Agri, AGRI-MKTG.com.
And we will have your link as well on our website in the episode's notes.
Sure.
So let's start wrapping up. Just a couple more questions. You offer also consulting services. Can you tell us a little bit about these services?
Yeah, we tell people that we do offer consulting services to come in and to analyze their operation and to give them recommendations on what, you know, they may be able to be more profitable, more successful. A lot of times that we will send as part of our package third-party consultants into an operation. They could be from a local university to go in and analyze feeding systems, management, animal health, computer management systems, because we want them to be successful. And, the feeds, this example that we feed here in the United States will be much more different than somebody feeds in Thailand or China. And we want them to get the most genetic potential out of these animals that they can. So consulting, we do that. We do some specialty products in consulting. As an example, a couple of years ago, we moved the Anheuser-Busch Clydesdales to China for a 3-month tour and brought them back to the United States. So we've done some consulting packages for different companies that have tried to get in to look at certain markets to see how their products, and we save them some time because we've maybe been in certain markets for several years, and we can save them some blood, sweat, and tears on other things that they may be working for.
Tony, did you get to ride any of the Clydesdales?
Didn't ride with them, but I rode on the plane with them coming back. That was the first shipment of U.S. horses to come out of China to come back to the United States, so I was on the plane with them when we returned. And that was the first shipment of U.S. horses to come out of China back to the United States.
Wow, that is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was a good project.
Now, if somebody wants to contact you regarding your consulting services, what's the best way to contact you?
Well, they can contact us through our website. We have an info link on our website. Our phone number is also listed on there as well. We welcome calls, emails, and happy to talk to anybody. We spend a lot of time talking to people on a weekly basis. A lot of times it's probably not a very pleasant call because people have gone into a project and tried to do something on their own, and they've got a bad situation they're trying to solve that they probably should spend a little more time of trying to work out something. And to back with all this new technology that we have by email and communication, a lot of people look at our company as a trader, and that's probably the biggest way to offend me is to call me a trader. We provide a service. And a lot of people around the world think, well, we could do this directly with a farm here in the United States. Well, that farm here in the United States may not have any experience at doing this. And in our business, experience comes very, very expensive when mistakes are made.
Absolutely, especially as you mentioned, when some of these shipments are multi-million-dollar shipments.
Sure. Yeah, and there's been a lot of horror stories over the years of people that got in. I tell some people all the time, the first thing you might want to do is watch the Clint Eastwood movie Dirty Harry, and that line in there in the movie in the very beginning, a man has to know his limitations. And we have the same thing here because there's certain things that we cannot do, certain things that we can do, but that applies to everybody. So you need to know your limitations. And for people that want to get into this, how dedicated you are to the export market. Because a lot of times with our farmers, they'll get an inquiry off their website, and it may lay on their desk for days or weeks before they reply. And we kind of have a standing thing here in our office that if you don't know the answer, you get back to the client and say, we received your message, we're working on it, we'll get back to you. Because, when you start your website as a small company and the inquiries you're going to get, a lot of this turns into what I call the missionary work. There'll be things that you'll not be paid for. They'll ask for samples or product information. And, you start sending FedEx or UPS packets to Asia at $80 or $90 a packet. There's a lot of missionary work that goes into this of trying to build your business and to enter a market.
That's great advice. Tony, just a couple of more questions. What's your schedule as far as replying to emails? Do you have or phone calls? Do you have a time where you cut off communications, or if you get an email way late at night, you take care of it? Well,
we kind of operate here almost like a convenience store. I get up pretty early. I'm up by 5 o'clock, and we do the first round of emails. This would take care of most of our Asia mail, around 5 to 5:30 in the morning. And that way, a lot of times we can answer a question or solve an issue, and they can reply back to us, which saves us a day. And then I'm in the office when I'm in town. I'm here by 6:30, and then I'm out of the office by 6 or 6:30 in the evening, and then I'll do one more round of communication between 8 and 9:30 at night. So it's one of these things we just can't let go, and it's probably a little bit of a fault of mine, but we have customers that not only communicate with us now by email, but BlackBerry messaging and Viper and text messaging, and it just seems like there are so many ways, and Skype as well. It's all the time, and I know there's probably times that I just need to shut it off, but our business is about service, and that's the way we run it here.
Tony, thank you very much for being with us today. It's been a fascinating conversation. Do you have any parting words for our listeners?
Well, Alberto, it kind of comes back to, for the people that want to look at exporting, for people that have a product that they develop, they need to remember that this is exporting your products as supplemental income. It's kind of like the Social Security system. It's the supplemental income that complements what you're doing in your day-to-day business. So many times when people look at the export market, they think, well, this is how I'm going to get the back 40 paid for. This is how I'm going to hit the home run and make a lot of money with just the export business. But the export business is so much like the domestic business that it complements what you do, and you need to approach it like that.
Great. Tony, thank you very much again.
My pleasure, Alberto, anytime.
I want to thank Tony Clayton for sharing with us his experience and advice, and for taking the time out of his busy schedule to be with us today. If you want to learn more about Tony and his company, Clayton Agri-Marketing, visit our website, exportlikeaboss.com. There you'll find the link to his company and the resources mentioned in this episode. And remember to follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @exportlikeaboss. And you can also contact us via email at podcast@exportlikeaboss.com. We love your tweets and emails. That's it for today. See you in a couple of weeks, and remember, the planet is your market. Export like a boss.
You've been listening to Export Like a Boss, the podcast for those on the front lines of international business and trade. For past episodes and more information, visit us at exportlikeaboss.com or subscribe on iTunes.